2. Welcome back at WNST and Baltimore Positive. Don Moeller's here. We're at Fadley's. It is segment 3, the finale with mayoral candidate T.J. Smith. Think different, new mayor, new culture, new Baltimore. More than anything, in putting Baltimore Positive together, the mayor's race was my complete focus in doing this a year ago, right? And the mayor's race isn't over until November. Most people think it's solved in April. I'm not necessarily convinced of that, but I am convinced that there will be a much smaller turnout in April than November because that's the way it always goes. We've seen in other big cities that this primary becomes everything, but there's so many candidates now.
Right.
You were sort of late into the game, as was Mary Washington. Who knows? Sheila Dixon's late into the game. Everyone senses some opportunity here. Something's going to happen in April. We're going to have an election, but where are we going to get this unprecedented turnout and all of the things that all of the candidates are out talking about, which is register, vote for me, register, vote for me? At some point, you'd like to think people would be more engaged with just the act of voting, right?
Baltimore's changed their voting cycle. This will be the second mayoral election that's on the presidential cycle. It used to be in an off year. So that will help boost voter turnout a bit. The national stuff that's going on. We're also picking a president in a very polarizing national cycle, so that's going to help boost voter turnout. But you also look at the state of the city, and people do. I feel it everywhere. There are more people. I feel like more people are talking about this than ever before. And you have some formidable candidates. Look, I feel like I'm the best for a variety of reasons. I mean, I'm from outside the culture that currently exists, and that's the culture we need to shake up. I don't
know that most people know that about you. You come from the land of TV and famous people and wear a tie, and that you are not. You have not come from, but you've been appointed by elected officials.
So I'm born and raised here in Baltimore City. Lived in Baltimore County. Lived in Anne Arundel County. Worked in Anne Arundel County. Was a sworn police officer, police commander there. Came to Baltimore City as the chief spokesperson there. Was a top advisor to the police commissioner. I was in the room when Darrell D'Souza was fired by Mayor Pugh. I was then appointed by Johnny Oshesky in Baltimore County, kind of succeeding Don in a little bit. Now, he was like a man of
he left the place so perfect, Johnny O can't help it.
I say succeeding him. I didn't get to his level yet. That's what I'm working on, actually. But
Johnny's taking the county to new heights.
So I've been in government, but I've never been an elected official before, and I think that that's a plus because we've seen the disappointment we've had from elected officials, and the reason I say that is my professional career is behind me. I've actually worked, and I don't mind working again. I'm a person of public service, so I'm looking at this next moment as an opportunity to serve without an agenda of getting things done, but not an agenda of what's in it for me, what's next for me. It's let's do what's right for the city of Baltimore, the city that we all love. And I believe in breaking down these barriers. I mean, we have these walls up that we don't think people from the suburbs matter. Yes, they do. We want everyone to come. I bet Fadley's would love if a bus tour from Harford County came here and bought up every crab cake here. It doesn't have to just be Baltimore City residents. If these doors are busting open with people who don't live here, they're going to be able to hire more people. And a lot of those people that they hire are going to look just like me. And it's going to be opportunities for people who live in this general area. And if we just go a little west of where we are right now, we have some big-time problems. And the more opportunity that presents itself through economic development, the more opportunity it presents for people who live in some of these communities that are in despair and have been that way for a long time. So I want to bridge the gap of unity. Baltimore being an independent city, I think it's a bit of a chip on its shoulder where you go to places like Chicago or Atlanta, they're within a county, and people from the suburbs go into the city to enjoy their evenings, enjoy the time in the town. We have this independence where, we're not part of a county, we're our own thing, but we have to break down those barriers because they keep the economic engine of the city rolling.
Well, like you, I have spent an inordinate amount of time in the suburbs, Harford County, Carroll County, Howard County, and a year ago, I started hearing I'm never going back in the city. I ain't never going back down there, the Squeegee Boys and my car and the Orioles and the crime, and I want to see on Channel 45, and I'm never going to the city. And that's why I started this, because that's an I live at the Inner Harbor. Right. I see what it's done to Reggie's down the street. I see what it's done to my partners, and that's one of the reasons we come to Lexington Market to promote this incredible historic institution.
This is where you have to come to get a crab cake. If you go somewhere else to get a crab cake.
And I took
Coco's.
Nestor, I love Coco's. But we're talking crab cakes. You're out in the county.
Just saying you can't get a tourist crab cake.
No, you got to go to Jennings and you go by our other friends at State Fair and get some chicken and waffles.
Mm-hmm.
But I came down here with my wife 3 or 4 days before Christmas. Nestor knows this, and it was exhilarating. I said to her, let's just get in the car and run down to Fadley's. And she said, yeah, that sounds good. And the energy
packed,
and the diversity, and it was packed, and it really was a celebration of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So I want to drill down a little bit. Mm-hmm. So the Smith administration, it's an issue that Nestor cares deeply about, economic development.
Yes.
What are you going to do, TJ, to breathe new life into the
I'm at the Inner Harbor. How do we fix the Inner Harbor? Let's just start. There's one
All right,
little thing for you.
so fixing
It's
the
my
inner,
neighborhood.
fixing the Inner Harbor,
which Roderick's calls a hole in the ground.
Well,
and I think he's pretty much right.
I think what's happened is
I think that was the mechanic was the whole.
Right. That's right. It was the mechanic.
So the idea of the Inner Harbor back in the 70s, 80s comes up, and we haven't done anything to it to improve it, basically. We kept the enclosed place as malls have fallen by the wayside.
The last great idea was Governor Schaefer bringing the aquarium.
The aquarium. And
it's 37 years ago.
And we've allowed it just to simply function on its own, and that's just ridiculous. So from the visionary standpoint, I look at a place like Fadley's would be phenomenal down at the harbor, by the way. But we need, in my opinion, level the pavilion and make that some sort of open space. I would love to see local restaurants, and we're just talking about the harbor, local restaurants, but provide a different layer of character. This is a world-class waterfront that we have there. Ultimately, people have to feel safe. You have to start changing the perception of the city, first of all, to have people want to come there, and you want them to walk around and bike around.
I want to stop you right there because you said world-class. That's not, no, that's world. You know how I know this? My wife and I walked to Roost Chris last Friday night. It was a cold night. Before New Year's, but after Christmas, quiet week, Friday night, we literally walked. We heard, and I'm not kidding you, a dozen different languages from people. And it was a holiday, people were visiting, whatever. Hey, we're going to go down to the harbor. Man, we travel the world. We just got back from Tokyo and Korea. I mean, I know the difference between Korean, Tokyo, and Chinese, Philippine people. We walked through the harbor. We heard a dozen different languages.
Well, think about this.
All over the world.
Think about
in one 5-minute walk. It was like being at LAX.
One of my most favorite times, occasions that they had at the harbor was the Star Spangled Spectacular.
Oh, that was great.
That was phenomenal in 2012.
Celebration.
Shout out to my good friend Dan Beagle.
But I mean, the Star Spangled Spectacular was phenomenal. They had fireworks in 5 different locations around the harbor. It was a big so. After that happened, I thought about it. And we're the home of the Star Spangled Banner. Baltimore should be and can be a destination for people on July 4th to come and experience what Baltimore has to offer. We should have a amazing display of what we're putting on for the city around July 4th to showcase it. And we should
own July 4th.
We should absolutely. And I'm glad we got to talk about some Be More Positive stuff because that's what we can showcase the city.
We got to do that too. So.
But when we talk about the equity, if all of our investments are only in the areas for tourists, only in the areas for people with money, we're going to still have the problems outside those bubbles. We have to focus and I use the word equity loosely because really if it's an equitable approach, you're not really pulling up a community that has been suffering because they haven't been getting an equitable share. So it has to be overinvestment in the areas that have been historically underinvested in. It has to spread. And we have to hold the ground that we have, and we have to spread. We have to focus on individual communities and build them up through multiple different ways. It's nothing wrong with green space. As we knock down some of the blight and vacant homes, there's nothing wrong with green space. A new development doesn't necessarily need to go in there. This city, if you think about it, was built for 1 million people that lived here back in the 1950s and 60s. It's not 1 million people, and we won't be at 1 million people anytime soon. So we have to go ahead and create the spaces that are green spaces, and it's okay.
Well, we've seen this in Detroit. There are other examples of urban metropolises that have shrunk and have struggled through that, but then rise up.
We can't be shy about asking investors to invest. Like, there's also this perceived war on capitalism that I feel in Baltimore. It takes money to make money. And let's just use the aerial surveillance plane as an example. A lot of the critics say he just wants to make money off of this thing. And I'm like, all right, so the way he makes money is if it works. it works because we'll see an increase in our homicide closure rate. We'll see a decrease in crime. That's, in theory, the way it's supposed to work.
That's what we're investing for.
That's what we're investing for.
Right.
So if he happens to make money as a result of it working here, we should say thank you and go out and make tons more money and keep helping Baltimore become a safer place. I'm not advocating that it will make safer, and I want to just clear that up because people will take a soundbite and go crazy with it. I believe that we should be using the technology. I know that the technology is a tool. It's not the mea culpa that's going to solve crime. It's a tool to get us closer. We cannot, again, we talk about throwing a baby out with the bathwater. We can't complain about a 31% clearance rate, and then there are tools and opportunities to go out. And the privacy advocates is like, we can actually do this in the confines of making sure privacy is number one. Look at all these Ring doorbells that are out there on the street. Look at all the surveillance cameras, the private surveillance cameras that exist, and that information being stored by a private individual. We have to understand the parameters of safety and the law and understand all of it.
You and I have, and we have a lot of the same friends, and my progressive friends will occasionally push back on me as well. I'm with you, and I think you're on the right side of that issue. I probably get asked that as much as any. I just got asked it 2 nights ago. So I said, New Year's Eve, had friends over, and they said to me, I know you talk to people all the time. Can you tell me why anyone would oppose surveillance planes in a city with the violence? And my answer is, no, I can't, because if I'm walking from Nestor's and all my privacy friends out there, get your emails ready, get ready to crush me on social media. If I'm walking from Nestor's over to Ruth's Chris or to one of the other attractions in the Inner Harbor, I could care less that a plane is over top surveying me walking.
I'm assuming that I have been captured. When I walked to Ruth's Chris the other night, I have been captured on 400 different cameras just literally walking through the harbor to begin with. Right?
I gave a presentation at a secret federal institution after the surveillance plane thing in 2016, and they laughed me out of the room, making jokes about this aerial surveillance. Like, what is that little thing, you guys? Because of what we know is really going on. And look, we all deserve our privacy, but we have to be reasonable. Like somebody brought up to me, well, I don't believe that should be the law. Well, that's the Constitution. This is not stuff that's made up. A reasonable expectation of privacy is just that. We can't make it fit when we want it to. And of course, there's a great responsibility. So the issue is the trust with the police department and this technology. So I understand the reasons that people are apprehensive about it, and we have to work to bridge that gap to ensure people are okay with it. But we a lot of people said, why does Baltimore always have to be the test case? And I asked the question, I haven't gotten an answer. What have we been a test case for? Especially when it comes to technology. What have we been a test case for? It really is no more fertile ground of a test place than the place with the worst per capita murder rate in the country.
And it's not.
We should be inviting as much opportunity to help us clear murders and catch murders and stop murders.
If we had the solutions, this wouldn't be going on, right?
Exactly.
TJ, it's always, we say it's not one thing. We were struck recently, there was an article maybe a month ago about the success of safe streets over in Cherry Hill.
And Park Heights as well.
It actually blew me away. I had to read it twice because I thought I was misreading it. One of the most violent precincts in the city of Baltimore had gone a year
without a murder,
without a homicide. Now, the three of us look at one another and say, well, if that violent precinct just went 1 year.
What are we doing there? Let's move that.
Why aren't we expanding
investing more? And that's certainly a commitment of mine. I was actually out with Safe Streets on the first of the year.
Tell folks what it is, the Four Dummies version.
Safe Streets are called violence interrupters. They're some former felons, former criminals who have reformed themselves, gotten involved in this, and they're funded by the health department. And they actually are the intermediary where they have zones. It's not like all of Cherry Hill. It's a zone. So, yes, there was a murder in Cherry Hill last year, but not in the zone. And they're called violence interrupters. So if there's a beef going on, there's something going on, they get involved and the police don't. So you kind of keep a separation and try to resolve disputes before it gets to violence. Park Heights went more than a year without a murder. The Park Heights area where Safe Streets is. The zones, yes. So you see this, and then there's a response. They go out and they will rally up people. And on January 1st, after the triple murder that occurred on New Year's Eve, I believe it was, or might have been New Year's Eve, actually, I went out with Safe Streets, and all of the different safe streets. Cherry Hill was there, Park Heights, Bel Air, Edison, West Baltimore, Penn North area, all came over to rally in the streets and walk the communities. And there are so many good movements. There's another group of men who march on, and I say march, it's a movement, on Mondays and Saturdays. And it's a resource, trying to put resources under one house. And that's the great thing that I'm feeling as I'm around.
There are good people in the city.
Well, there are many good people.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing is so many people that are engaged on a different level. It's not what can the government do for me. It's what we can do for the government and what we can do to assist. So one of the things that's very encouraging from these men's walks, the last numbers I got, up to 80 people who have gained employment simply through all of these men walking through the community, and up to 40 people who have gone into treatment that would not have otherwise. That's 120 people directly impacted on the street by individuals, not by the government, by individuals.
If you give somebody a job, you change their life, right?
You change that. You give them meaningful employment, you can change their life. And we have to also recognize that there are wraparound skills that are needed. We have to teach you how to work, how to respect your employer, how to understand that. If it's going to snow tomorrow and you have something on your schedule, you're thinking ahead of how you're going to navigate and deal with this thing. If you might have to cancel it Monday, whatever it is. Some people never learn those skills, and you have to get them accustomed that you can't wake up and watch Marty Bass and Tim Tootin saying school's closed. It don't work that way. You're going to have to go to work through hell or high water. So getting the mindset of responsibility and accountability is a thing for longevity in employment, because that's what we need. We don't want you to bounce around. We want you to move to better opportunity, but not just bouncing around because they had to let you go because you weren't performing well.
TJ, again, we're with TJ Smith, a Baltimore City mayoral candidate. TJ, we had several months ago, we had Matt Gallagher on, and Matt, of course, was the architect of Mayor O'Malley's City Stat program. There was no City Stat when Matt came to town. It's his baby. He created it. It held the city accountable in category after category after category, from potholes to murders to robberies to rec programs. You had to come in and you were evaluated. Is that not that it has to be called City Stat? Is that kind of data-driven approach a part of the Smith administration?
And look, maybe some people in my campaign would get mad at me. I don't have the ego to say what a predecessor did, everything they did was wrong. That's the stupidest approach in the world, in my opinion. You have to take what worked right, and you have to put your own spin on it if you want to, improve it or whatever. But that makes me ask the question: how did we ever get away from that?
Right.
I mean,
well, we asked.
Who thought that was a bad idea?
Yeah. So we
asked that.
If we look at what's happening,
well, the arrest
now,
record of Martin O'Malley makes everyone look at that and say we want to run away from all of it.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater.
The governor's going to be here, and we're going to walk through that.
But when it comes to things like potholes, when it comes to things like spending, whatever it is, why don't you have accountability measures? One of the words that I use the most with my team is outcomes. And when I'm asked about anything, especially if it involves spending money, what is the outcome? If we're going to dump a Brinks truck worth of money into something and we get a 3% outcome, is that worth it? Is that return on investment worth it? No. We work for the people. That's what we do. It's not about us. It's not about being a VIP and all. We work for the people. And we have to get back to that just basic approach. Again, really, when you come out of your community and you have to go over a pothole and you might have to buy a new tire, my low tire light's on now because I run over potholes all the time.
I've had the same homeless person living on my corner for 16 years.
And
I'm literally
I want to speak on this.
16 years, the same human being has lived at the corner of Charles and Conway.
Yeah, I want to speak on this before we run out of time, because this is important. The squeegee situation, homelessness.
Same corner, by the way.
Toughest issue that we have people to talk about on here.
People get really polarized over this issue, and
we're all ears, TJ.
So we have this squeegee issue, and I've taken a bit of a stance where I don't think it's acceptable. I don't think it's acceptable
that
because
makes two of us.
I think it's unfair what we're doing to the young people on the street, where we say it's okay for you to dodge traffic to earn money. we know and recognize that there's a problem. So if we do interviews of these young men and we find out that they have, young men and women, and we find out they have problems at home, their parents could be addicts, we know there's a bigger issue that we should be dealing with. But to just ignore it and act like it doesn't happen. 2 recent stories already in 2020 of incidents involving a purported squeegee person have already been on the news. And I feel like this is going to culminate in some significant issue taking place.
You know why I know it's a bad idea, TJ? I'm 51 years old. I've traveled all over the world, all over this. I am in more cities than most people most days because of football, baseball, my proclivity. I like traveling. I have never been anywhere where that happens.
Well,
other than my corners in this city where it's become accepted. It's outrageous from an insurance, from a liability. Yes.
So we've identified the issue.
Now, I have
day one. You're the mayor.
I have a plan that will take a couple of weeks to institute. I have a plan, and it was out of a couple of cities in America already where they did it with homeless people. They did it with reentry as well, where we actually, it's enough trash in the city. It's enough debris. It's enough things that need to be done, where you go out and gather the young folks every single day. You pay them a meaningful wage. It might be $15 an hour, it might be a little bit more, who knows, but you pay them a meaningful wage. But they have to be at a specific place at a certain time, and they work specific hours, and it could be cleaning up areas of the city, and we know we have that problem. And you're building in the wraparound services that have put them in the situation that they need in the first place. We have to look at it from an accountability standpoint as well. If you're supposed to be in school and you're on the corner making some money, well, we have a bigger issue that we need to deal with, and we should not be turning a blind eye to it. We have a lot of people who just, they take one end of the spectrum or not. Get off the corner. They should be on the corner. Well, why are you okay with them ditching school to be on the corner to make some money? That's not fair to them. We're cheating them. And I got attacked recently by some people who think that my approach is too staunch when I said it's a form of oppression. I said it's a form of oppression because we're telling mainly young black kids that you can go out, make the money on the corner, you don't have to go to school, don't worry about any customer service, don't worry about a permit, don't worry about paying taxes, don't worry about learning anything.
And if I hit you, what happens? If accidentally you're in front of my car, what happens?
Put yourself at a disadvantage from a safety standpoint. And we have a mayor who's about to go to prison for taxes. We have a police commissioner who's sitting in prison for taxes. And we're not even going to take the time to teach you. So when you're 21 and you're an adult, you've learned not to cut corners to make money, but you've learned how to go forward. I have a problem with that. I'm not, and here's the other thing. Here's the big thing, and I should have said this from the top. My approach, think about this. We put the police on this problem. This is not a policing issue. This should be social services, workforce development, Office of African American Engagement, the health department, the school system, before we even get to law enforcement, dealing with these young people, and some older. It's one in my community. He's got to be 30 years old that's on the corner. But these are who needs to engage these folks first and find out exactly what it is we can do to help get you out of this problem. Now, you say, you know what, I'm doing this through hell or high water, then we have to have some sort of rules and parameters in place. What if every kid decided this is what I'm going to do? Right. We wouldn't find that acceptable.
Well, we did that on snowy days in my neighborhood. We go knock on, Miss Grace's door
with
a
shovel.
So, I mean, that would be the urban part of that I would say in the suburbs. That's what we did when it snowed.
Mm-hmm.
But I deliver newspapers. You get a job. You get a job and pay taxes.
And we have to stop with all of the photo op stuff where we gather up the squeegee kids on one Saturday and pay them $50 for cleaning up 5 pounds of trash. That $50 is not really doing anything. They need a structured environment, and they have to understand that the reality of life. You're 19. I understand their issues, and we're going to work with you on the issues that you have, but we have to build in a layer of accountability and responsibility, and that's become a bad word to say that. But what are we setting them up for if we don't teach these things? What are we setting them up for?
TJ, it's funny. It's been a theme that I think has run through, and we've talked probably almost an hour and a half now. It's been great. But one of the themes has been responsibility that I hear from you, and the ability to talk about tough issues. Because, again, like we talked earlier about good cops, bad cops, keeping the street safe, community safe. Same to me with young men who are on the corner with squeegees. Because you want the young men off the corner, and because you're willing to say, look, this isn't good for them, and it isn't good for economic development doesn't mean you want to throw the kids away.
Yeah,
it's
that has
not
nothing to
an
do with it.
either or.
Yeah. But there are people. The minute you say I don't think squeegee kids should be
Right.
on the corner, you hate.
Right.
No. If you listen, I'm telling you, we're adversely affecting them and their future because we're teaching them how to cut corners. We're teaching them, and we're not teaching them anything else. We're
And they're
teaching
not
them
in school, which
we're-
isn't
We're
going to
not
help
teaching
them.
it. We're
Yeah.
sanctioning
We're-
it. We're
we're-
allowing it.
And it's negative. It's a negative impact even to that kid that's teeter-totting in school, where they say, "I can just go do this."
Right.
It goes
Because it
back
makes
to
you
what
feel
we
better
said
today.
with other activity. If it looks like it's easy, if there's no consequence, then more people are going to do it. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that we police our way out of it. I just said there are so many different things that should be on top of this problem before we get to any sort of law enforcement aspect of it. And I think that there's a way, and I have a plan that can put them to work and still use donated dollars from people, donated dollars from the business community, and provide some meaningful community work and have a standard in place where they're actually learning some skills, some life skills that are going to benefit them. None of these folks that are protecting these kids, the safety issue is number one, but none of these folks that are protecting their interests right now are going to care where they are 10 years from now.
Right.
And that's a damn shame because they're
That's a great
and,
point.
That's a
and
great
and,
point.
And I say oppression because it's the people who are sanctioning this don't live in these communities. The people who are adversely affected by it are young black males mainly, and they are being taught how to cut corners and learn the game. Learn, you know what? I need to get a permit, and I can actually sell waters on this corner. And we build in this
Follow
entrepreneur-
the rules.
It's and
Kind of a
you're-
life lesson.
and you're attacked when you say you need to follow rules,
Right.
and you get attacked. That goes back to one of the reasons I'm running. I'm okay with those attacks. I'm gonna pick a side. And I believe in accountability and responsibility, but I'm not that staunch on it that I don't recognize that you have to learn these things. But we can't just keep kicking the can down the road, and then when something happens, we say coulda, woulda, shoulda. Let's take real quickly the tragic situation that happened with Officer Amy Caprio in Baltimore County.
Oh, I'll never forget it.
But what I looked at was the young man's mother, who said I was
My
begging.
worst day.
I bet it was.
Yeah, my worst day.
I was begging the system to intervene. I was basically begging for accountability. There was a story on New Year's Day in the Baltimore Sun. Mom, her son was killed the day he was released from prison again, and she says he should have been in jail. I was begging the system. I'm not advocating. Some people you have to save people from themselves. And what I'm saying is, I just want to make sure it's clear. You save them from themselves not by just detaining them in a room, but by working through. Now, this is going to sound really out there, but understand me. People should be graduating from prison. If you're serving a 5-year sentence, in your last 2 years, you should be building up towards something, and you walk out of there not just with your old ID and your bag that you came
Well, it's
in with.
irresponsible for the government to let these people out.
And we currently are doing that.
It's
And one of my
malpractice.
and one of my asks from the state is going to be specific funding to reentry. Specific funding to reentry for people with Baltimore City zip codes that are coming back to Baltimore City.
Now, tied into all that, I think, and again, we're with T.J. Smith, Baltimore City mayoral candidate. You can't talk to a mayoral candidate without talking about the other elephant in the room, opioids.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore City, along with every other city and county in the nation, has an opioid crisis. What does the Smith administration do about it?
Well, opioids have been a problem in Baltimore. First of all, it became a bigger problem when it got outside the city of Baltimore. Truly, I was actually working in Anne Arundel County when fentanyl became an issue. I remember former Commissioner Kevin Davis was the chief at the time. We had morning meetings every day, and I remember. I brought it up in one of the meetings. I said, man, we see a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds. And the first instinct from a law enforcement background was a bad batch. It must have a bad batch of heroin, a bad batch of dope somewhere. We started tracking it down there, and we found out this thing called fentanyl was being laced. And then we saw it just start exploding in Harford County, in Anne Arundel County, in Baltimore County, in the suburbs, and we started talking about it. Now, here's, and again, what we're going to do about it. But I have to bring a history lesson in here. So if you look back at the paradigm shift, in the 80s when crack flooded urban America, it was a war on drugs. We over-criminalized people who were crack addicts, and many of them were young black men, people in my family, and we disrupted the family system. We looked at it as a criminal problem. Now we have the opioid epidemic, right? We have the opioid epidemic because it's affecting more than just urban cities and black people. So we have this opioid epidemic, and we're treating it as a health crisis.
We're not throwing people in jail for opioids.
Yes, right. we shouldn't be because it is a sickness.
Right.
And we know better, so we know better. Back then, if people were around the table getting high on crack and one of them ODs, you call the police, everybody gets locked up for the crack on the table. Now we've passed the Good Samaritan law, where if somebody ODs, we go in and nobody can get arrested. We get everybody to treatment. That's what needs to happen. We need to continue to push forward with those. And one of the programs that is in Baltimore that needs to be expanded is called LEAD, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. Had great success in Seattle. We've had great success with the pilot program right around the Lexington Market area in Baltimore. But what that is low-level drug users. They're people possession of drugs. What point is it? If I lock somebody up who has one little crack,
right.
They need help. They need treatment. And we have to cut down that window of opportunity to get them to treatment. We take them to jail, sit in jail, they go through the motions, they're back out, they're going to do it again. We have to get them back into treatment. We also have to be realists and understand that relapse is part of recovery. Yeah. So more treatment and more education.
Treatment on demand, right?
Treatment on demand. But the education in schools, the DARE program back when I was coming up, it scared the crap out of me about using drugs. I mean, this is your brain on drugs. I'm not using that. No question.
Remember when they showed me Raw Way Prison?
You remember that?
Right? Scared straight. That was the end of that.
So
I didn't want to be one of those people.
So the education level is one thing because we have to train the minds that you want to stay away from this. But the treatment is a huge thing, and we have to invest in it.
It's such a regional issue. I have to give a shout out. Just an article just by the time this airs, it will have been a week or two ago. But your former boss, Baltimore County Executive John Oshevsky Jr., going to look at zoning changes in Baltimore County, which are needed to bring more treatment. And again, it's a regional issue.
And I remember talking about that. And you have to have them in an area that are easily accessible by public transportation so that people can get to treatment. We can't put them, I know people don't want it in their neighborhood. I understand that. But you can't put them in desolate areas where people can't access them because then they're not going to go to treatment. So we have to find a happy median. And there have to be parameters in place, when it comes to treatment centers. But we need more. This is a sickness. Drug abuse is a sickness, and we have to look at that through the lens of health and not the lens of just policing.
All right, let's wrap up with a couple of political questions. One of the things I hear from the insiders all the time, and when they handicap this race, they don't count you out. And here's one of the reasons what they say, TJ, is they'll say, TJ has a unique connection with those folks in the pews on Sundays. First of all, is that true, and why is that?
Well, I just keep it real, and I think what people have gotten to see from me is a bit of I think some consider me a political figure even though I wasn't, and they he keeps it real. And I said things that no one else would say, certainly in my position. There was a 82-year-old and 92-year-old brother and sister who was shot in Walbrook Junction back in 2017. And I went on the scene of that. It was 1:40 in the afternoon. I grew up not far from there. My grandmother was home in the house she lives in. And I'm thinking about my grandmother at the time, thinking how she used to walk to the salon. And I said, you don't shoot old people, and see, this is outside the parameters of the game. I said, this is a violation of the rules of the game. And I said, those who I'm talking to know exactly what I'm saying. I know there were some people probably out in the suburbs saying, what is he talking about? But when I walked down the street after saying that, I'm getting fist bumped. I knew exactly what you was. But I'm saying that because from a communication perspective, you also have a bully pulpit to specifically talk to people. And I'm talking to the streets where they know, all right, you're out dealing your drugs. Okay. But you shoot old people, you know that the block is about to be hot. And you know that you have a responsibility to make sure that person who did it is turned in or in custody. You know that. And in the past, kids, elderly, people who weren't involved in the game aren't supposed to be victims of it. And that type of real talk where, we're supposed to say no one should be victims of crime, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But we know that some people are involved in high-risk behavior. And if you're involved in high-risk behavior, there are risks that come along with that. But if you're not, you shouldn't be a victim.
So how do you take TJ Smith for Baltimore.com? We again, when we have folks on, we drive you to their websites. We want you to be educated.
Safer streets, accountable government, elevated education, equitable investment, connected Baltimore. I think we covered it all. Did we cover it all?
Yes, how do you win?
How do I win?
Well, let's end with that. How do you win? Nestor always wants to know, how do you win this daggone thing?
People come out and vote for me. Bubble in T.J. Smith. That's how you win. But you also win by connecting to people and really getting them to believe that you're going to do the right thing. I mean, because right now, the hardest part for this is talking about what I've been a doer all my life. So being in a campaign for the first time in my life, I'm talking about what I want to do, and I actually want to do. I actually, I'm ready to hit the ground running. So I'm prepared on April 29th. We still would have a general election.
Not really.
But you know what? I'm not taking anything for granted.
Oh, I'll argue that all day. But that's okay.
I will be ready to start a transition process while I'm campaigning to compete in November. And the day after the election in November, I'm already ready to build a transition team and build a cabinet and get to work. I have my briefcase ready to go.
How hard is it to raise money?
It's difficult.
It's new for you, right?
It's new for me. And
tell everybody what that's all about, raising money to, we hear so much. I saw the report card on the presidential candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Julian Castro jumped out. If you're just joining us. But,
Well, so
no money, no campaign?
I'm fortunate to have people who believe in me, who are part of the campaign. But there are some paid spaces that you have to have. There are some things that you want to do. People want signs and things like that. That costs money. So being on television, that costs money. Having ads, that all costs money. So raising money is critical, and it is a difficult thing to get used to, asking people for money for this, but it's something that you have to do. So anyone who can donate $5, $10, $15, $25 I would appreciate it, because I want to keep this small dollars. I'm not the guy who wants to write checks.
You're
back
the Bernie
to
Sanders of the race.
Small
dollar. I don't mean
small
politics.
Yes,
small dollar
yes, small
contribution.
But I don't want to be the guy who's the corporate candidate, and then somebody's caught up in a scandal and you have to write a check back to that person because their money is funny. I don't want to hit that funny money. I want to hit the people's money and low dollar amounts, and I want them to have an investment in this race. And I think this year you're going to see a lot. And I want to give credit where credit is due. Every single person who has sacrificed themselves to run, my hat's off to them, because it's a lot of work. Whether I agree with your politics or not, it's a lot of work, and you've stepped up to do something for people. And hopefully, if you're the eventual winner, you have the people's best interest in it. I used to tell young officers all the time when I was a police officer, because we go through our tough days. Remember that day that you sat at the interview table and you interviewed with likely 3 people, and they said, "Why do you want to do this job?" And you likely said, "To help people." Remember that. Don't ever forget it. And that's something that I've always lived with and I've tried to do. So that's what I'm going. I quit a good paying job. I'm not working. This is my full-time job. I'm not running for any other offices. We've had candidates who run for whatever office is open.
You're not going to be writing any books and selling them to corporations?
That is paradigm shift.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, T.J. Smith.
Thank y'all.
Nestor, another great
Baltimore
discussion.
Positive. We're down here, Faithley's. We're coming back. We got a whole litany of different guests that are coming your way. Make sure you're checking the bottom of all of our Baltimore Positive episodes as we enter 2020.
Get out.
The year the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl.
Get out.
Agree on that, right?
Get out to State Fair and watch some football. Jennings, watch some football. Check out our friends at Thread. 2020 is going to be awesome. When this airs, actually, I think the schedule will go up January 13th. It'll be 2 days after the Ravens will have won their first playoff game, and they will be on to the championship.
I'm on to Miami. Is all
there
I'm
we
saying.
go.
Yeah. He is done.
Wait a minute. Let's take advantage of this, because on the 13th you'll still have some time. Tell folks who are still looking for a Super Bowl trip, you're still going to have some stuff going.
WNST.net. I plugged that enough.
Come on.
Have a crack.
You want to go to the Super Bowl? Check out Nestor at
Get
WNST.
those tickets now.
There you go.
Baltimore.
I'm Nestor Easton. We're WNST.net, AM 1570, and Baltimore Positive, and we'll never stop talking about making the city better.